If you are over 60 and you still drink plain water every single day, I need you to stop what you are doing and watch this. Not because water is bad for you. Water is essential. But because after 60, plain water alone may be silently working against one of the most critical systems in your body. And the fix is so simple, so overlooked, and so backed by research that most people feel almost angry when they first hear it. They ask themselves, why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? My name is Dr. Vincent Halberg. For the past 23 years, I have specialized in metabolic aging. Specifically, the way the human body loses its ability to process energy efficiently as it gets older. I have reviewed thousands of cases. I have sat across from patients who are doing everything right, eating reasonably, staying active, following their doctor's advice, and still feeling worse every year, more tired, more bloated, more foggy, struggling with weight that seemed to appear from nowhere and refuse to leave. And in the vast majority of those cases, when we dug deeper, we found the same thing hiding in plain sight, something the body desperately needs, something that was once abundant in our food and our water, something that has been quietly disappearing from our daily lives and taking our metabolic health with it. Stay with me, because in the next several minutes, I am going to show you a pattern that your doctor has almost certainly never explained to you, a pattern that begins silently, progresses slowly, and that most people mistake for the normal side effects of getting older, except it is not normal. It is not inevitable. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your body, you will never look at your daily routine the same way again. Let me start by asking you something. Think about the last several months of your life, not the big moments, the quiet, ordinary ones. The afternoon where you sat down after lunch and felt a heaviness that made it almost impossible to concentrate. The morning where you woke up after 7 or 8 hours of sleep and still felt like you hadn't rested at all. The evening craving, that pull towards something sweet, something that felt almost beyond your control, that arrived like clockwork, regardless of what you had eaten that day. Have you been writing those moments off, telling yourself it's just age, just stress, just life? I need you to consider the possibility that those moments are not random, that they are connected, that they are part of a single story your body has been trying to tell you, and that the story has a name. When we talk about blood sugar, most people immediately think of diabetes. They think of insulin injections and finger pricks and hospital visits. And so, unconsciously, if they haven't been diagnosed with anything serious, they assume the subject doesn't apply to them. That is one of the most dangerous assumptions in modern health. Because what research now shows, clearly, repeatedly, and across multiple decades of clinical observation, is that glucose dysregulation does not begin with a diagnosis. It begins years before, sometimes a decade before, sometimes more. It begins as a quiet inefficiency, a slight friction in the machinery, something the body can compensate for at first, and does heroically, invisibly, until the compensation itself becomes a problem. Here is what is actually happening inside your body when this process begins. Every time you eat, every single time, whether it's a full meal or a small snack, your digestive system converts that food into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream, and your pancreas receives the signal to release insulin. Insulin travels to your cells and essentially knocks on the door. It says, "Open up, glucose is here, let it in, convert to energy." In a young, healthy metabolic system, the cells hear that knock immediately. The door opens, glucose flows in, energy is produced, blood sugar stabilizes. The whole process happens smoothly, efficiently, and without strain. But here is what changes as we age, and this is the part that almost no one explains clearly. Over time, especially after years of dietary stress, mineral depletion, and chronic low-grade inflammation, the cells begin to lose their sensitivity to that knock. They don't open as quickly or as fully. The pancreas, sensing that blood sugar is still elevated, knocks louder, produces more insulin. The cells respond even less. And so the pancreas escalates again. And this loop, this exhausting, relentless cycle, is what researchers call insulin resistance. And it is not something that happens suddenly. It creeps in, slowly, over years, while you're living your life, go to work, sleeping, eating, exercising, and feeling somewhere underneath it all that something is just slightly off. The fatigue after eating is one signal. The inability to lose weight despite reasonable effort is another. The brain fog that descends in the early afternoon. The cravings that feel metabolic rather than psychological, because these are not personal failures. They are biological communications. Your body speaking to you in the only language it knows. And now I want to tell you about the piece of this puzzle that most people, including most doctors, are missing entirely. There is a mineral that plays a direct and critical role in how efficiently your cells respond to insulin. Without sufficient levels of this mineral, the signaling process between insulin and your cells becomes sluggish. The knock gets quieter. The door opens more slowly. And the entire metabolic cascade that is supposed to regulate your blood sugar, protect your energy levels, and keep your weight stable begins to falter. Not because of any single dramatic event, but because of foundational deficiency that has been building for years. This mineral is not obscure. It has been studied extensively. It is essential to over 300 enzymatic processes in the human body. And yet, and this is what I find extraordinary, the majority of adults over 60 are significantly deficient in it. Not borderline deficient. Significantly. And most of them have no idea. Because the early symptoms of this deficiency do not arrive with a label. They arrive as fatigue, as cravings, as weight gain, as poor sleep, as that persistent fog that you keep trying to explain away. Now here's the connection to water, and to the title of this video, that I want you to understand fully. Decades ago, the water that came through natural sources carried meaningful amounts of this mineral and others. People absorbed it passively, daily, without thinking about it. Modern water treatment, filtration systems, and the widespread shift toward highly processed food have stripped those minerals almost completely from our daily intake. What we drink now is clean in one sense, and dangerously empty in another. And after 60, when the body's ability to extract and retain minerals from food is already declining, that emptiness has consequences that show up in exactly the ways I've been describing. I want to speak to you directly for a moment, not as a physician to a patient, as one person to another, because I know what it feels like to watch someone you care about decline gradually, and a sense that something foundational is being missed, something that should be simple to address, but that keeps getting overlooked in the rush of standard medical appointments and generic advice. I have seen patients in their 60s and 70s who were told their blood work was acceptable and who still felt terrible every single day. And I have seen those same patients, when the underlying mineral depletion was finally addressed, begin to feel like themselves again. Not overnight, not with any dramatic intervention, but steadily, measurably in their energy, their clarity, their relationship with food, and their sense of control over their own bodies. This is not about a cure. I want to be very clear about that. I am describing a form of nutritional support, a way of restoring what the body has been missing, so that its own regulatory systems can function the way they were designed to. When you give a depleted system what it needs, it responds. Not always dramatically, but consistently across thousands of cases. The pattern holds. There is a method, a targeted combination of mineral compounds and botanical extracts that has been studied specifically for its role in supporting healthy glucose metabolism and cellular insulin sensitivity that I have been recommending to patients for years. It is not a pharmaceutical. It carries no harsh side effects. It does not override the body systems. It works alongside them. And if you are someone who has been experiencing the signals I've described, the afternoon crashes, the relentless cravings, the stubborn weight, the sleep that doesn't fully restore, then this may be the most relevant thing you encounter this year. I have placed detailed information in the link below this video and in the first pinned comment. I would ask you to read it carefully, not because I want you to make any hasty decision, but because the information itself is valuable, because understanding the mechanism matters, because when you see the research and you recognize your own experience inside it, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop assuming this is just what 60 feels like. And you start asking a different question. Not what is wrong with me, but what has my body been missing, and how do I give it back? Let me tell you what happens when this process goes unaddressed. Not to frighten you, but because I believe you deserve honesty, and because I have watched too many people wait too long. The metabolic system is adaptive, brilliantly so. For years, it can compensate for deficiency, for inflammation, for insulin resistance, and it does quietly while you go about your life. But every system has a threshold, and once that threshold is crossed, the compensation becomes insufficient. The pancreas, which has been working overtime for years, begins to show signs of strain. The cells, which have been ignoring insulin's signal for so long, become increasingly unresponsive. The weight that was difficult to lose becomes nearly impossible. The energy that was low becomes depleted. And the window in which the simplest interventions are most powerful, most effective, most likely to produce meaningful change, begins to close. I have seen both sides of that threshold in my practice. The patients who came in early, who recognized the signals, who took action while their body still had full capacity to respond. They are thriving. Many of them are in their late 60s and 70s, and they feel better than they did at 50, not because of anything miraculous, because they listened, because they acted, because they understood that the body does not send warning signals forever, and that the appropriate response to a warning is not to wait and see, but to move. You are here right now, watching this, which tells me something important. It tells me that some part of you already knows that what you have been experiencing is not entirely normal, that the fatigue, the cravings, the weight, the fog, they are connected, they mean something, and that something deserves a real response, not another generic recommendation to eat less and move more. The link in the description below this video and in the first pinned comment leads to detailed information about the mineral-based metabolic support approach I have been discussing today. Read it, understand it, see if your experience is reflected in what you find there. The people who are feeling the difference right now are the ones who decided not to wait for a diagnosis to take their metabolic health seriously. They acted while their bodies still had the full capacity to respond, and that decision is one they have not regretted. Your body is still capable of remarkable things, but it needs the right conditions to do them. It needs what has been missing, and the time to provide that is not after things get worse. The time is now, while the system is still listening, still adaptable, still able to respond to what you give it. Click the link below, read what is there, and consider that the simplest decisions made at the right moment are often the ones that change everything.